Welcome, Solarah here. I hope you guys are doing well, and a very happy new moon in Gemini to you. I'm here tonight to do your new moon in Gemini TAROTSTROLOGY Ascension report. So as I sit down to record, it is Tuesday, May the 27th. It's just after 11 p.m. my time, and the moon entered into her newness at around 3 in the morning my time. So it's been almost 24 hours, but we'll get into the energies of what is playing out right now. And as always, I will go into what I call the TAROTSTROLOGY of it all. So if you are not familiar with who I am and how I work, I am not a traditionally trained astrologer by any sense of the term. I read energy through astrological charts, but also by way of the tarot, numerology, and channeled messages, as well as the astrological comprehension I've come to unlock within myself, and how I relate those energies. So it's a different experience with me than just regular astrology. So please be aware of that. I also am not wonderful with the astrological lingo, so I refrain from using most of it, except for the ones that are a little bit more common. So I'm not a classically trained astrologer in any way, so if you are a stickler for that kind of information, you like it presented in that way, I'm probably not the person for you. But either way, I want to take a moment before I get into tonight's chart to say hello, welcome. Welcome if you are visiting me for the very first time. Welcome if you have been with me from day one. If you've joined me from my other platform, Solarah Speaks, or any of my other platforms, welcome. Welcome if you joined somewhere along the way. We're going to go on a journey tonight and see what this chart has to tell us about what is actually happening right now in terms of our collective and individual ascension processes. So before I get into actually diving into the chart tonight, I do want to take the time to read what it is I've written about this already. So for those of you who don't know, I'm a writer. I'm a writer, probably before most things, I'm a writer. And I write pretty much on the daily over on my platform, Solarah.xyz. And for those of you who've been tuning into the community board, then you would have seen the daily alchemy messages I've been posting here quite gratuitously over the past week or so. I post those every single day over on Solarah.xyz, as well as other content for my various membership tiers. So if you'd like to join me over there and stay in contact that way and have more access to what it is I'm doing and writing on a daily basis, and also audio messages, readings, etc., then please feel free to check me out on Solarah.xyz. But today's article is up on the site. I will do my best to remember to link it when I publish. It is open to everyone. This is a public article, so you can go back and read it yourself if you'd like. It is Moonrise Musing number 66, which I found to be really funny because I sat down to write this late afternoon, and I had literally just opened the chart to see what was going on with the new moon and realized that the sun and the moon met in Gemini at 6 degrees. So we've got 6-6 energy happening in the chart. And when I sat down and I realized what I was writing, what number I was on for my Moonrise Musing, it was number 66. So I found that to be quite funny and apropos. So the title for this evening's Moonrise Musing, New Moon in Gemini Moonrise Musing, by me is called, the title is Love and Technology Intercept to Birth the New World. Happy new moon in Gemini. Today's moon is a lover's moon, where polarities clash and merge to create something new, and new contracts solidify in accordance with how much we've come into union with the truth of who we are. Gemini season always takes us through the portal of fast-moving change. We can literally wake up in one reality and be living in a whole different one by day's end. It is truly a sign that embodies the quick-changing and fast-moving nature of Mercury, the planet that is its ruler. As we enter into this new moon portal, our minds are being quickened. We are getting the opportunity back to tune into higher aspects of our own mental processing faculties. We've been taught to harness the power of our minds purely for the purposes of the false matrix's agendas. The powers that were very aware of how potent our minds are to create, and they also knew that if they could get us to direct our mental energy towards their own focus, we would create exactly the world which they desired for us to build. They did this all through their programs, initiatives, and philosophies on what the normal baseline for human life is or should look like. And for as long as we believed in this fairy tale, we were living subpar realities where our minds were under the subjection of these beings who literally were programming us to use our minds against ourselves and one another. As we believed the limitations they placed upon us as being normal, we devolved into the state we're waking out of and got stuck creating timelines that are not a true reflection of who we are as creator beings. The truth is that our minds have infinite potential, and anything we think we can draw into material existence, and instantly. It is only our staunch belief in the concept of things taking time to materialize that puts us into the realities where we do have to wait. But once we truly remember how to create in an instant, using the power of our thoughts to draw down the materials we require from the quantum space, we can literally birth new ideas and concepts instantaneously. And I believe that is the spiritual lesson that AI is here to teach those of us who are ready to evolve and ascend back into this ability on Earth again. It is but a tool that we can use with integrity to put us back in touch with our own infinite mental capabilities. Or it can alternatively be used as a tool of devolution, like it became in Atlantis. It is ultimately up to us how we use these technologies, which are neither good nor bad in theory, but can be used for our personal and collective ascension or descension, and it will always depend upon our own hearts and the true state of our consciousness. Today we cross a threshold into bringing in what we were programmed to believe was impossible back onto the earth planes, and this goes for so many areas of living. The main thing I think this new moon is ushering in, though, is the return of our true technologies, which were once driven consciously by the power and intention of our souls. This is why love is so integral to all of this, love for self and love for one another. For it is only through love that we can create and use all of our original technologies without distortion. And these technologies were not on computers and visceral databases. Once upon a time, our mind focus was so immense that we were able to create these data banks in the quantum and connect our minds to them without any hardware or software as intermediaries. Our desire to make these powers more inclusive is why we began creating software and artificial intelligence in the Atlantean age, and it became our undoing because not everyone had the integrity of heart to be entrusted with this sacred transference of wisdom. The way a cycle begins is the way it closes out. If it was the creation of some of these technologies that provided us a bridge out of the previous golden age, that same bridge must be reopened for us to get back. This is how cycles close out once and for all. In other words, a lot of what is happening right now in the world of technology is almost taking us back in time to undo what occurred when everything went wrong in the previous golden age timelines. And the power that is seemingly being unleashed into the world will be returning to its rightful custodians and guardians. And as it does, we will all remember and rise back into the power of utilizing our own minds in accordance with our soul's individual energy signatures and the soul-run technologies we each have access to based on our individual frequencies. Those who are the true lovers are the ones who run these timelines and technologies with integrity, because it was always love that was the main soul fuel keeping Earth at a frequency where the Golden Age timelines were possible. Our unions, both internal and with divine counterparts, are what are necessary to bring these technologies back under our guardianship again. So, love and technology intercept to birth a new world today. And this is something only possible to say or even think of by the powers and expansion afforded us by Gemini. So, happy new moon to all my lovers out there. Ashe. Okay, so I wanted to share that because before I get into the chart, I wanted to kind of share the summary of what I was channeling when I was writing earlier on today and see how it comes out, if it comes out at all, in the breakdown of the Tarot-Astrology. Okay, so let's get into this. Alrighty, so the new moon in Gemini occurred, like I said, at 3 in the morning, my time, or 2 in the morning, I forget. With the time shifting now, summertime, I forget. It was either 3 or 2 in the morning. Anyway, when it occurred, the sun was in Gemini at 6 degrees and the moon was in Gemini at 6 degrees. Now, Gemini is the final zodiac sign on the first quarter section of the zodiac wheel. So if you break the zodiac wheel into 4 distinct quarters, you'll always have 3 signs going in the order of cardinal, fixed, mutable. So the cardinal sign that kicks off the whole zodiac wheel is Aries, and we've got Taurus, which is a fixed, and we got Gemini, which is a mutable. In the second quarter of the zodiac, we kick it off with Cancer, cardinal water, Leo, fixed fire, and then we get to the halfway point of the zodiac through Virgo, which is mutable earth. Okay, so like I said, each quarter, cardinal, fixed, mutable. Now, the reason for that is because every time we begin a new quarter in the zodiac wheel, on the zodiac wheel, we are actually instigating a new theme. And then the 3 signs within that quarter are there to help us with that theme. It's kicked off and introduced through the cardinal energy, which is a Kickstarter kind of energy, right? All the signs. And then we move into the fix, where we begin to establish off of something new. And then through the mutable sign, we begin to integrate and find where we're comfortable with what it is we've accrued so far through the introduction of the energy and the getting comfortable with it. Okay, so I say all of that because with Gemini, we are in mutable air. And the first quarter of the zodiac, Aries, Taurus, and Gemini, are really about helping us to recalibrate our mental bodies, helping us to rise higher into accessing higher and truer thoughts about who we are through Aries, which connects us to our divine identity, and then to help us establish and root into the worth of that story in order to bring it forth. And by the time we get to Gemini, it's about expanding our consciousness even further now to see where all of that can actually take us. In other words, with Aries, we were introduced to a story of something, an inkling of what could be possible in accordance with who we are. Through Taurus, we got, our horizons were broadened with the introduction of the resources that we've always had and we needed to unlock, but we could only unlock when we began to connect with the new idea that Aries helped us to reach. And with Gemini, it's more like, now we get to expand the fullness of our mental capacity to really begin to embody and to live the story, right? So for those of you who might not be aware, Gemini is the first sign on the zodiac wheel under the rulership of Mercury. We have 2 signs in the zodiac wheel that are ruled by Mercury, both surprisingly, or maybe not, I don't know, well, you can decide, but both, in my opinion, surprisingly mutable, right? And for me, I say surprisingly because I would think that maybe one would be mutable and one would be cardinal, but no, they're both mutable. And, you know, that does speak to the quick moving nature of what Mercury represents as a planet, and then also in terms of the metal that is also, you know, the metal that represents the energy too. So mercurial energy is very quick moving, fast moving. It doesn't settle very easily. You never really know where it's going to go. And it needs to be that way in order to aid us into going to places that we ordinarily might be afraid to venture into. So Mercury is the planet that really begins to connect us with the infinite possibilities of our minds, is what Mercury does. And Gemini is, when it's working through Gemini is like it just like literally connects us to the all. So if Mercury, you know, I'm going to use this example again for those of you who've been chilling with me for a while, or you've joined me for any of my Tarotstrology group sessions, or you've had a personal Tarotstrology reading or report with me, you'll know I use this analogy quite often when speaking about Mercury and how it expresses itself through Gemini and through Virgo. So if you think about Mercury as being like what gives you access to the universal records. So, you know, if we were to bring this down onto Earth level, I'll say like the US Library of Congress is like what Mercury is. Right? Gives you all of this information kind of in one place. And then it's all good and well to know the library exists, right? But if you don't have a library pass, it don't mean anything. You got to stay on the outside looking in. So Gemini is the library pass into, you know, the US Library of Congress. Now you're in the library. So now you're surrounded by all the information, all the books, you have access. But if you're going into a library as grand and as big as, let's say, the US Library of Congress, but you don't have any kind of plan, you don't know what you're going to look for. And even if you do know what you're going to look for, you have no idea where to go. So Virgo is that kind little librarian that says, come honey, I know my way around here. I know every book top to bottom. I know how to cross-reference that shit. What is it that you're looking for? Let me take you to the section you need. Let me help you find the books that are very specific to your cause and your purpose. Let me find the cross-reference ones in the other section. You go take a seat over there at the table. I'll bring it all to you. That's Virgo. Virgo is the librarian. Gemini is your access card. And Mercury is a fucking library. Okay, so right now, when we're in this Gemini window, you have so much access to what it is that you have access to all the time, but it's not very easy to grab a hold of, because Gemini is the sign of the zodiac that dares you to break out of every mental prison that has kept you out of your higher timelines, that has kept you from being able to embody the information that through Aries you get to connect with. And again, Aries connects you with your I am truth, your divine identity. But you need to expand your mind and your consciousness in order to actually assimilate that information to the point where you're walking it out, you're living it, and you're producing realities and timelines that prove that also, as opposed to just maybe thinking it, knowing it, and that's where it kind of ends. It stays in the head, but it doesn't become real. Okay, Gemini gives you the ability to expand your consciousness to the point where not only does it become real, but another beautiful trait about Gemini energy is that it gets you excited again, right? It gets you excited about accessing certain things again. In fact, I get along pretty well with Geminis. I'm a Leo sun, and I get along pretty well with Geminis. And I often will joke with them that they're like the fire signs of the air signs, because that's what they do. They get you excited. They get you excited again about information. Okay, so let's break down what does that all mean for us right now. Well, you might have in many ways felt all of a sudden a rush of enthusiasm when the sun entered into Gemini. A shift, a lightness may have come into the energy for you also, in accordance with your ability also to let go of the heavy shit that also is a very much a part of the Gemini energy too, because Gemini forces us, well, it doesn't force us. Gemini invites us to come to terms with polarity, come to terms with duality, our dual nature, and come to terms not even with our dual nature, but the dual nature of all things, right? Gemini helps us to begin, recognizing that everything's a mirror, and understanding and overstanding how everything is a reflection. We're just always watching ourselves. That's Gemini helps us to expand our consciousness even further in understanding that concept. So let's get into a breakdown of what these energies are meaning today. So the sun in Gemini at 6 degrees, that's the sun card in the tarot. That is the Magician and the Lovers. So the Magician is a card that is connected to Gemini because it is the Mercury card. It is the card that represents the planet Mercury in the tarot. And again, because Gemini is ruled by Mercury, this is why the Magician is connected to both Gemini and Virgo energy. So the main card of Gemini in the tarot, in the major arcana, is the Lovers. But we also have it bolstered by the Magician because of its association to Mercury. Now, the 6 degree mark of Gemini is represented in the minor arcana by the 8 of Swords. Now, when you're dealing with 8 energy, you're also connecting to Leo timelines, to Leo themes, because that connects us to the major arcana card in the tarot, which is Strength, which is the number 8 card. So there's something that we are, being asked to tune into our hearts with very, very succinctly in order to push ourselves out of something. Because remember that the 8 of Swords is the card where she's feeling like she is entrapped. And indeed, she is surrounded by all of these swords, and she has a blindfold, and she might not know how to maneuver through those swords. And yet, her hands aren't tied. So all she actually has to do is remove the blindfold to see how it is she can get out. It's an illusion to think that she's stuck. And the ability to get out requires not only the removal of the blindfold in the physical, it requires the removal of another layer of the veils that have cloaked her mentally. Now, the Gemini cards of the minor arcana are very connected with the mind control agendas of the false matrix, with the mind control agenda. So Gemini comes to help us break out of those. And nefariously in the false matrix, they also use the Gemini energy to keep us entrapped, because a sign's ability to liberate us is also the same way it can trap us. Because again, and this is another lesson of Gemini, polarity, right? So if a sign can do, if one thing very expressively, it can do the complete opposite very expressively, right? So for those of you who are super kind people, like I'm a super kind and a super sweet person, like really, really sweet, really, really kind. And I'm also a really big bitch when instigated to be one because of polarity. So if you're cool with me, I'm cool with you. Again, I'm super sweet. But if you get on my wrong side, people don't like to be on my wrong side, because as sweet and as warm as I am, I'm also cold and cutting and can be really, really like I've forgotten about you kind of energy, And I find that with most people that are really, really kind and really, really sweet, when they're really, really real and they are rooted in themselves and their truth, a lot of the time that kindness is made possible by their ruthlessness, and their ruthlessness is possible because of their kindness. They've learned how to find some kind of balance, because that's how polarity works. So this is why, you see all these memes all the time, and I laugh at them because it's so true. It's like, people think that they can keep on poking the bear when it comes to dealing with like super kind and super sweet people, not realizing that you push them too far. That if you push them too far, that the polar opposite of the sweetness and that can come out too, So anyway, I digress. So the Gemini energies are very much connected to the mind control agendas of the false matrix. So given where we are in ascension, and also the 6-6 energy, which shows us there's some kind of balancing that's occurring, and for me the 6-6 is a very specific balancing that has to do with the grids and has to do with dragon energy. A lot of the time when I see 6-6 or 6-9, it's to do with something to do with the dragon lines. So there's some kind of balancing that feels like it's coming through in the dragon energy specifically, and the dragon lines are very connected to the emotional planes on the earth, which connect to our emotional bodies. So even though we're dealing with mental energy and Gemini, we are being prepared for some kind of grand emotional shift. And why is this important? Because you birth through your emotional body. You bring forth reality through the element of water, which is connected to your emotional fields. So somewhere along the way, even before we enter into Cancer season, which is where we really begin the calibration of our waters, we are already being shown that something is being put into order for that too, through the presence of the 6-6. Now, interestingly enough, also 6-6 is, astrologically speaking, that's a Virgo number, right? So when you're dealing with this Virgo energy in terms of the number 6, you're speaking about the calibration that comes within self to ready you for sharing your energy with another. Okay, that's how I kind of read it. Now, the 6-6 in terms of tarot energy is, funnily enough, connected again to the Lover's card, which is a card of Gemini, and the number 6 card in the tarot. So we've got a lot of stuff going on with the energies of now. Okay, so the sun and the moon coming together to show, because the moon's in her dark phase and the sun is always, shining and illuminating shit. So we have very, very strong spotlight on the shadows of all of the ways we still kind of entrap ourselves in our own minds based upon the limitations that many of us have been programmed into because of trauma, because of the lies of the false matrix. There's really a spotlight through this new moon on breaking us out of anything that limits us in this specific season, in accordance with what it is we've been learning on an individual level since the sun moved into Aries. So think about it, because there is a culmination occurring through Gemini of what has been going on for you since the sun entered Aries, or since we began the new astrological year. Okay. Now, Mercury is also in Gemini. Mercury just entered Gemini maybe 2 days ago, probably right around the time, interestingly enough, that Saturn entered into Aries. Mercury entered into Gemini. So Mercury in Gemini. Mercury loves being in Gemini, right? Because it rules over the sign. So, and we're only just at the beginning of Mercury's sojourn through Gemini. So we're only even just beginning to kind of have the blanket moved off of our consciousness just a tiny bit. So I'll be intrigued to see what the energies are like once we get to the full moon in Sagittarius, to see where Mercury is at that point and what would have happened over the next 2 weeks in terms of our own, materialization of higher timelines, but also our own our own ability to see, and not only to see, but to also just really embody some of these things that we've been And when I say embody, I'm really talking about, like I said before, it's one thing to know something in your mind. It's another thing to believe it so powerfully that you don't have to convince yourself of something anymore. So I'll be very intrigued to see the level of confidence rising as Mercury makes its way through Gemini this season, right? So let's get into the breakdown of this energy. So Mercury, again, is the magician. And then, so we have double magician energy. And then we've got the lovers again. And the 2-degree mark is also the 8 of Swords in the tarot, in the minor arcana. So we're still dealing with the same energies as the sun and the moon. But it's like we are, where the sun and the moon are just beginning to show us certain things, Mercury will be moving right behind to help us discern and to make sense and to grab a hold of the information we need to not only again know these things, but begin to discern, interpret, break down, integrate, and really allow it to become part of our story. Our lived story, you could say. Okay, so I would also venture to say, because we're dealing with so much lover's energy, because of the power of Gemini, that we're also going through a very rapid shift in the in relational dynamics, in the influx of new earth relational dynamics born of our ability to process our own limitations. And that probably is occurring in a myriad of ways, from the ways that we are beginning to actually have deeper access to understanding about ourselves, and maybe things we couldn't see before, we couldn't grasp before, or maybe we weren't fully ready to really kind of wrestle with before. This energy gives us the bravery and the courage, and maybe that's where the Leo energy is coming in also, with the connection to the 8s that I was speaking about before through the tarot, the 8 of Swords being connected to the Strength card, which is the card of Leo, the number 8 card in the major arcana. Maybe this is where the Leo energy is coming in also, because it feels like there's a sense of bravery and courageousness that is coming in terms of our ability to go places that we have kind of closed ourselves out of before, because the mind is such an interesting thing. And we know about this through psychology, that a lot of the time when we go through certain traumas, we can learn how to lock ourselves out of those scenarios. We can learn how to completely forget about things we've been through. We can dissociate. And it's a protective mechanism where we shut off certain parts of our own minds to keep ourselves safe, because our own psyches can't handle that information in the moment. And it feels like we're going through this ability on an individual and a collective level to go into places mentally that we haven't been able to venture into before because we weren't ready. And maybe the barrier that kept us out was fear, maybe it was guilt, maybe it was shame. It's almost always a lower emotional energy, what I call part of the trauma trifecta. It will always be something, fear, guilt, or shame will be the barrier that keeps us locked out of something that we need to get free and to go higher. So as we try to move into that place, we become afraid and we move back and we just run in the opposite direction. But what this energy is, what this portal is helping us do, is to push past the fear anyway, is to push past the guilt anyway, push past the shame, push past all of the emotional barriers that once locked us out of certain places in our own minds. And that is so powerful, because it's only by going through that process that we actually are able to break out of the programming that was designed to control us nefariously by the systems, the institutions that were designed to also police us in the way that we think and we express and we show up in the world. All of those barriers are being challenged externally also, but firstly as we do the work internally. And you may have noticed when you're dealing with the collective energy, you might be looking at the world right now and beginning to realize that certain things that we're talking about on a collective level, certain things that people are entertaining on a collective level, a few years ago, it wouldn't have even been possible. I mean, I want you to just think about how far we've come. It's been 5 years since lockdown. 5 years, okay? And then in the time that ensued after those first few months of lockdown came the whole, issue and debacle with the thing that they had to put, people wanted to put in their bodies. I still won't say the fucking word because of the algorithm, but you know what I'm talking about, right? The V. And so, remember how close-knit people's minds were off of the possibility that there could be anything that their governments were doing or the pharmaceutical companies that were doing that was nefarious. Like, families were falling apart because people were arguing about this stuff, and the ones who were talking about it were the conspiracy theorists. And now when you look at the news cycle 5 years on, the things that people are willing to entertain that at the time was like anathema, it's everywhere now, and it's a wider collective talking about these things. And this is exactly what I'm speaking about when I say the expansion of the mind and the expansion of consciousness, and that's happened really rapidly, and the ascension energies are only picking up. And I say that because through this new moon in Gemini, through this season in Gemini, it really does feel like there is a huge wave of enlightenment that's coming through and picking up like wildfire. And I really do believe as Mercury continues to move through the sign, it's not really the sun that's doing this. If the way I read it, it's Mercury's moving through the sign that is really firing this up too. Yes? So 2 degrees, that is a degree of Taurus, right? And it's connected to the High Priestess in the tarot. So through this new moon in Gemini, Mercury is coaxing us into this ability to move past the certain limitations within our own minds based upon our expanded view of our own worth. So Taurus season was here to help you connect to a higher sense of your worth, a higher sense of your self-worth. And now Mercury is like, okay, you've gotten that picture. Let me help you now to get the information you need to not only have that idea of who you are, but really begin to walk it out. Let me help you, pull together what it is you need to make that real. Okay, so this is what I feel like Mercury is helping us with, also helping us to not only tune into the idea of a higher sense of self, but also talking us through how to get there and talking us through also the details of the truth of who we are. Because as we unlock this ability to connect with a higher sense of our worth, we're connecting with what was always there. We're connecting with something that has a conjoining narrative and timelines that sometimes we've touched and maybe even lived through at some point. And Mercury is helping us to stream that information through again so we can begin to take it live, take it live. Because how many of you have been dealing with like living in lower timelines because you get so far and you get pulled back under, right? So it's almost like Mercury is just like, okay, time to grab the higher timeline. Let me give you a bit of a reminder of what it's been like when you previously walked in it, whether it was this lifetime or another. And let me also remind you of your worthiness so that you keep on going. Let me tell you the story. Let me tell you some stories about who you are. Let me show you a little bit of who you are, or let me remind you of who you are. And this is what's coming through. So also pay big attention right now to your dream space, because the dream space is shifting very rapidly now too. And what I mean by that is that your dream world is your canvas for creation. It's what connects you between the cosmic infinite materials that are available for you to draw down into the material planes. You do it via the dream space, whether you're doing it through imagination, meditation, or actual literally, going into dream state. That's what it's actually designed to do. And through the false matrix, it's programs, it's fuckery, it's utilizing trauma to keep us under control. That dream space was hijacked, but it's really supposed to be kind of like your canvas. And there's a certain authority that I feel we are taking back when it comes to reclaiming our ability to dream again without interference. So pay attention, because Gemini energy, Gemini season, tends for many people to also heighten your dreams. I know we think a lot of the time with the water signs, but from my experience also, Gemini season is very potent when it comes to speaking through dreams, and also helping you to clear the cache within, the dream space. Okay. Venus in Aries at 20 degrees. So Venus has been making her way through Aries, while Mars is making its way through Leo. So the two first fire signs of the zodiac. And Aries is connected with the divine mind, and Leo is connected with the divine heart. So it's interesting because Venus is helping us to doing many things, right? But with Aries, we're dealing with themes of sovereignty, being true to ourselves, and recovering the mentality that is necessary to do that. And in many ways, the way that stubborn energy is playing itself out while Venus is in it, it's helping us to center love again, to make love the centrifugal force in the midst of the creation of our timelines, right? Which is kind of what I was talking about in the Moonrise Musing that I read to you guys, right? It's love and technology intercept to bring forth the new world, but technology that is not rooted in love and integrity and respect for every living being it's detrimental. It can be detrimental. And so in some ways, like this Venus in Aries is helping love to become the centrifugal driving force again, and helping us to really fix our minds and to think on that too. Reconnect with the wisdom that is necessary for us to pull through, to remember and reclaim love as the driving and centrifugal force again on this planet. Because it's love, when we are being driven by love, we keep all things here in harmony. We keep all things in harmony. Ourselves, nature, everything is in harmony when we are vibrating at love and above. Okay? Which is why they didn't want us in real love partnerships in the false matrix. They wanted the distortion and the interference that would cause the collective fields to be in a state of discord. Venus is the Empress. Aries is the Emperor. 20 degrees is... it's the doorway into the Three of Wands out of the Two of Wands. So we'll kind of use both. It's both the Two and the Three of Wands. Sorry, my bad. The Three and the Four of Wands. It's the doorway into the Four of Wands out of the Three of Wands. So from 20 to 29 degrees Aries, in other words, is the Four of Wands. And 10 to 19, 20 degrees of Aries is the Three of Wands. So something has been being introduced again to us in terms of taking us into a higher mentality concerning love. And through the 20 to 29 degrees, as Venus begins her journey through the final decan of Aries, the Four of Wands, something is now about to be established on the earth planes based upon this mental shift that we've all been invited to walk through. 20 is a degree of Leo, astrologically speaking, and it's connected to the Judgment card in the tarot. Okay, so again, this underpinning energy that we have with the Leo is also speaking to us of where we are reconnecting with the previous golden age, where we are coming back full circle to re-enter into something that we exited out of at the end of the previous golden age. We are re-entering. The way an energy begins is the way it ends. The way a cycle begins is the way it ends. We had to go through a whole cycle to come into this new golden age, but the doorway into the new golden age will always be vicariously through a back door of the old one, because that's just how energy works when you're dealing with cycles. So in other words, there's something that we are making contact with from the age of Leo, golden age timelines, that is really important and integral in terms of establishing the new golden age, very specifically because this is the first golden age since the breakdown of the previous one. So we still need certain integral remembrances, energy codes that have been under lock since the previous golden age, and it's coming up again because one of the main ways that those energies were kept suppressed was by keeping us suppressed and by keeping the frequency of the planet low, way below love. They kept us in fear loops. So there was no way we were going to unlock timelines that were rooted in love if we were constantly living in the frequency of fear, and we were constantly dealing with like the trauma trifecta emotions that were keeping us stuck and keeping those codes and the remembrance and the ability to rise into those timelines. Those were stuck too until we could collectively heal and raise the frequency again of the planet to a point where some of that stuff can begin to be unlocked more rapidly. So Mars in Leo, I'm getting tired. Mars in Leo at 18 degrees. Mars is the Tower card in the tarot. And Leo, of course, we've talked about this, is strength, as well as the Sun card. 18 degrees is a degree of Virgo, astrologically speaking, and it's connected to the Moon card in the tarot. Now, 18 degrees of Leo is the Six of Wands, also connecting us to the 8-8 portal. 8-8 portal is also connected to the Six of Wands. It occurs in the second decan of Leo. Yes, so Mars is firing something up here when it comes very specifically with those codes that we are entitled to have every single year to help us power ourselves on our own soul journey within the context of the collective story. And every year, those codes have been being siphoned. And so there's something going on here with Mars fighting on our behalf, very specifically for the materialization and anchoring in of those codes from the previous 8-8 portal, but also for the fighting for the materialization and the anchoring in of those codes as it's supposed to occur every year when we're not being siphoned, right? So 18 degrees, I mentioned, it is a, did I mention that's a degree of Virgo? Did I say that? A degree of Virgo, astrologically speaking. So again, you're dealing with that Virgo energy of helping us to helping us to come into order with how we use our energy, how we learn how to be true to self, and how to negotiate then go into the world and negotiate our energy in such a way where we're able to give to others and give to one another without further enforcing sacrifice and abuse templates. Virgo is a very big stickler for helping us to get alone and to figure out what it is we need to sustain ourselves and to thrive before we even begin to go out into the world and think about what that means when it comes to being with or around other beings. So there's definitely like some kind of reawakening of that information of what it means to be sovereign, what it means to be true, what it means to be independent, and yet at the same time prepare ourselves for interdependence. Whereas the false matrix templates liked independence or codependence, but not very big on interdependence, right? So interdependence is key. It's really important that we maintain our sense of sovereignty in our own personal identities while learning how to merge and come together in such a way where we're not depleting one another. And this is what Virgo helps us to learn. And there's some kind of remembrance coming through this new moon, very specifically with the Mars in Leo energy, to help us reclaim that also. There's also some kind of victory that you might be feeling is kind of underpinning the energies of now too. Like you're on the cusp, even when things are really feeling very tight and, stuff is happening really to help us to see where there are things we still need to be paying more attention to, even in the midst of that and the conflicts that arise in order for us to purge and to clear and to cleanse. Even in the midst of that, there's definitely some kind of victorious underpinning that you might be sensing in the energy right now. And this is depicted through the Mars energy in Leo with this Six of Wands. Six of Wands being on display here. The Mars in Leo also, I love when Mars is in Leo because it also is there to fight for our inner child, to fight for our ability to heal our inner child, to fight against the initiatives that have collectively exploited our inner child. Mars is very, very powerful for that too. And, your inner child is really one of your ultimate guides in the false matrix, which is why they were determined from the time you were a child to injure and to wound you, so that you would fall out of alignment with that innocence that is necessary for you to stay plugged into source. So there's some kind of like Mars is helping us to fight harder for the reunion with the inner child, but also what I feel like is coming through also, because we're dealing with, this is the Lover's moon. This is also about helping to heal one another through connecting with one another's inner children too. So especially for those of you who are coming into some kind of like divine partnership, whether that's romantic, platonic, it doesn't really, business, it doesn't matter. The more you're able to engage with another person's inner child, your inner child's able to engage with their inner child, it really does help in the healing that is necessary to go to higher levels of ascension within partnerships and to reinstate those new earth relational dynamics that have been so sorely lost because of all of the trauma and the need to survive. And I've talked about this before, about how survival does not cater to unconditional love. And so this is why they didn't want us in harmony with ourselves and thriving on a personal level, because when you're able to do that, you truly are able to give love unconditionally, because you're able to give from a place of overflow and abundance, instead of like what they had us doing, like scrimping and, like looking for, trying to get our needs met through another person who's also trying to get their needs met through you or another person. And it really wasn't ever meant to be that way. We were supposed to be fully plugged into source and able to get all of our needs met through that connection, and in that then branch out and be able to really love humanity and one another. So there's something here with that Mars energy assisting us with that. Now, I'm just going to jump to Saturn in Aries because I'm really tired. So let's jump to Saturn in Aries. Saturn just entered Aries 2 days ago and is still at the 0 degree mark. So we are in an Aries portal, an alpha portal, right? We've been in an alpha omega portal for a few, well, I don't know, as long as Pisces, Saturn was in Pisces at 29 degrees. We were in that alpha omega portal, and now we are clearly on the other side into the alpha portal. Okay, so the beginning of something, because not only are we dealing with the beginning of something because Saturn is in a new sign at 0 degrees, we're dealing with Saturn entering at the beginning of the zodiac wheel. So there's some kind of karmic order that is really coming into place through Saturn entering into Aries, because it's a new era. It's a new journey for Saturn around the zodiac wheel. And like I said before, Aries is cardinal fire. It kicks shit off. So there's something about Saturn entering into Aries that is really kicking off these new Earth timelines. And I was just talking to someone about this earlier on today, about how that changing of the guard energy has been really intensifying over the past few days and weeks. How the shifts out of the old world and into the new timelines, the new way of doing things, it's becoming very, very real. It's becoming the new way, the new possibilities are becoming bigger and greater than the old ones. The old world is being stampeded by these new earth energies that are coming through. If you're able to, to see that and to discern it, it's coming in very strongly and only growing in intensity. And I do believe that Saturn entering into Aries is really going to kick that off in such a big way. The changing of the guard has already been occurring, right? But it's one thing. It's I don't know, the example they're giving to me is how with the US elections, who's won the presidential candidacy. I think it's in October or November, the first week of November, you learn who's the new president. But the old president still has to serve out the last few months of their terms, and then inauguration occurs 2 or 3 months later. Right? So it's almost like we've had the changing of the guard. We've had the candidacy announced, and now we're entering into those proper inaugural energies of the new era with Saturn entering into Aries. Okay, so something new is being established. And finally, I'm just going to give, take a very brief look at the fact that the nodes are both at 23 degrees. North node 23 degrees Pisces, south node 23 degrees Virgo. And I'm highlighting that only because the 23 is a degree of Aquarius. So we have hit on the nodes an Aquarian degree through this new moon in Gemini. Okay, so the first time we've hit an Aquarian degree since the node shifted into Pisces and Virgo. And the second time we will meet an Aquarian degree is when the nodes are at 11:11. Okay, so something's opening into the gate, into the age of Aquarius through this 23. When 11:11 comes up, the gates for what is beginning now are going to be clearly open for us to walk through, you could say. Okay, so yes, I'm really tired suddenly, so I'm going to get going. But it's been a pleasure reading for you. I hope that this Ascension report was helpful, insightful, confirming, affirming. If you would like a tarot astrology reading with me, you can do so by contacting me directly via email, solarahspeaks@proton.me. I presently am only doing audio readings and one-to-one video calls. So if that's something you'd like to do, have your personal chart read by me through Tarotstrology, you can do so by contacting me that way. I'm no longer doing Tarotstrology reports. I'm actually working on my final one now, and then I won't be doing them anymore. I found a different way, but it won't be like what it's been up until this point, because it isn't sustainable for me. Okay, and what else? I have a whole bunch of new decrees, and I'm just finishing up right now audio versions, so please check out the community board. All my decrees are free or by inspired donation, so check out my Ko-Fi shop if you are looking to get decrees. I will put all the information for the most recent ones I've added to the shop in the description box and comments section below. Oh, I'm getting really tired. I can't talk. But yes, a big thank you to all of you who do donate upon purchasing or getting access to the decrees. It really does mean a lot. And I do put a lot of work into writing those decrees, and the work of learning and alchemizing even before that is like really huge. So I appreciate all the ways that you sow back into my ability to put that out there, especially because the reason I make them free is because I know so many people have financial blocks because of fuckery. And so those of you who are able to, it's not a hassle for you to donate. You really do help to sometimes offset the cost of my doing this when other people are not able to. So you're really helping our collective liberation. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much. For those of you who would like to meet with me for a soul recovery session, you still can do so. All the information for that is in the description box below. I still do have specials going purely for 90-minute soul recovery sessions. I will put the link for that. Also, the link for the discount for the 90-minute session, I'll put it in the description box below. I think that's it. If you'd like to join me, I already mentioned it before, but you can do so over on solarah.xyz to have more daily access and interactions with me via my writing. Yes, that's it. Happy new moon in Gemini. Happy new moon to the lovers. It's the lover's moon. It's the lover's moon. I will see you guys again for the full moon in Sagittarius in 2 weeks. Until then, be well.